I welcome all of you in this interactive session about knowledge and learning. In this session, I will be discussing with you briefly what is knowledge and what is the process of learning. And what I think is that, and what I will do, that this session will not be bookish in nature. So I will just share my experience, my knowledge with you about the learning and knowledge. Normally as teachers, you know that sometimes, not all, but some of us or sometimes we are delivering bookish knowledge to the learners, and learning is a different process. So what I believe, that as teachers we should not only be just bookish, rather we should also be creative, we should also be critical thinkers. So this is what real learning is. So in this session I will be discussing that how can we be critical in our approach to learning and in our approach to knowledge. Before that, I just briefly share my expertise with you, or my introduction. My name is Shehzad Kareem, and I work as an assistant professor of applied linguistics at the Islamia University of Bahawalpur. I have done a PhD in applied linguistics from the University of Sheffield, UK. I also did an MA in language teaching from the University of Auckland, New Zealand. I also did an MPhil linguistics from the Islamic University of Bahawalpur, an MA in English literature. And I worked as a professional development specialist at the English Language Institute of King Abdulaziz University for 2 years, from 2013 to 14. And I also worked as an executive member of the Linguistics Association of Great Britain for 2 years, from 2018 to 2020. Today's session. In our today's session, we will discuss these things. What is the reality of knowledge? What is the reality of learning? Is learning an interesting or boring process? What is the role of motivation in the learning process? How can we learn efficiently? We mean as students, learners, or as teachers also. The role of meaningful interaction in the learning process. And two approaches to learning, that is product-oriented approach and process-oriented approach. But before I start, I just want to tell you one thing, that this session is going to be quite boring for you. So don't have high expectations about this. So this is going to be boring. But we have to think that how this session can be boring. Can you tell me why this session will be boring for you? It will not be that much interesting.
Maybe you'll be sharing concepts and kind of you'll be going into abstract domains. So that apparently the glimpse is something like this. People usually find this stuff a little bit, boring. When everything is coming from the board.
Okay. So any other idea about why this session is going to be boring for you? Yes, please.
It might be possible that we are going to be just the passive listeners, not participating.
Okay. So how can we avoid boredom in this session?
Keep it interactive.
Okay, if we keep it interactive. But still, as I'm telling you, don't have high expectations, but keep thinking that why this session will be boring for you. And we will find a conclusion, or we will find the answer to this question by the end of this session, that why this session will be quite boring for you, okay? And basically, I'm not a motivational speaker, so don't think like this. It is just mean that we have to find out the answer, that why learning is a boring process. This is, as teachers, we should know that why learning is a boring process. Because when we teach, mostly it is boring for our audience, for our students. And if we ourselves sit on the other side, it is again quite boring for us, as it will happen with you today, that you are on the other side of this class, you are not here. But when you go there, you will feel that this is quite boring. However, to avoid this boredom, what you can do, I can give you a tip, that is, after every 15 minutes, you need to tell yourself, I am here to learn. Okay? So if you have got a notebook, a piece of page with you, so you can write, I am here to learn, because it will remind you that, okay, even if it is a boring process, but I am here to learn. And this will also keep you alive, because you know that psychologically it is told, or I mean the psychology tells, that after every 15 minutes our mind switches off and we have to switch it on again. If we really want to learn something, we have to tell our mind that, okay, you are tired after 15 minutes, now please get up again because I am here to learn. So in this 1 hour or more than 1 hour session, after every 15 minutes, even if I forget, you have to tell me that we are here to learn. Hello, excuse me, we are here to learn. But the first question, what is knowledge? Since in this session we will be exploring what is knowledge, what is the reality of knowledge, epistemology of knowledge. So what do you think, what is knowledge if I ask this question? A person who is, we say that the person has got knowledge. How can we say that the person has got knowledge? What is the reality of knowledge? What is your idea?
It's an information.
Information? Yes, anyone else please?
Awareness.
Awareness. Awareness of what?
Awareness of surroundings or a particular topic.
Okay.
Of any part, any phenomena.
How do we get knowledge?
Insights, experience.
How do we get knowledge? Through 5 senses? Okay. From society? Okay. Observations. Okay, these are the processes through which we get knowledge. If I ask that most of us, to a greater extent, we know many things, but we are not aware of that. Would you believe in it?
Yes.
Can you give me an example? That most of the time, this is my perception or my understanding, that our students or we also as learners, we know a lot, but we are not aware of that. Yes, please.
Like sometimes we do not realize that we understand a concept unless we come across a term for it.
A term for it, exactly. This is the. So basically, as learners or as teachers, we need to know and we need to tell our learners that you know. So as teachers, normally we make our learners feel that you do not know, and I am here on the other side and I will tell you. I will provide you information, and what I tell you, you will get that knowledge. So we show our supremacy that we have got more knowledge than you, so please follow us. But the reality is this, that as learners or as teachers, we have got knowledge of many of the things, if not all, at least many of the things we know in advance. But why do we feel that we do not know? Sometimes we feel that I do not know. So what is the reason when we feel that I do not know? If we do not put things into words, okay. We do not apply that knowledge. Okay. As she said that sometimes, do you agree that the point of view which she has given, excuse me madam, can I ask your name? Charisma. As Madam Charisma has asked, that the difference between knowledge or lack of knowledge is this, we are not aware of the terms. So the difference between knowledge and ignorance is the ignorance of terminology only. Do you agree with this concept? To some extent. Most of the time. So can you give an example?
One example I want to quote, that is like my father asked my son that what is Dua Kunut?
Okay.
So actually he inside Dua, but actually he was unaware that okay, that is the same term is going to be used for that Dua Kunut.
Yes. So yeah, exactly. So the son, your son, he knew that what is Dua Kunut,
Yeah.
but he didn't know the title. Yes, exactly. So this is one reality of knowledge, that most of the time we have got the ideas, but actually we are not aware of terminology. And you will feel that whenever we come to the class and we interact with our students, normally in our every lecture, we are telling them 4 or 5 new terms, or 5, 6 new terms. Those terms which they already know, but they do not know that they know. For example, you are the students of and teachers of linguistics also. So if I ask you, at what stage of your learning you came to know about phoneme? Phoneme. At what stage did you come to know that this is phoneme? When you got admission and when you studied phonetics and phonology in your masters. Okay. And similarly, yes.
Are you asking about the idea of a phoneme or usage of a phoneme in real time? Because in that case, in the latter case, one comes to know about a phoneme very early on at 10 months stage.
I mean, as a term, phoneme,
The term
when you had to describe that this is phoneme, at what stage did you come to know?
first year of bachelor's.
First year of bachelor's, means something when we are 18, 19 years. So at that time we come to know what is phoneme. And before that time, for the last 18 years, do you think that we have been using phoneme?
Yes.
For the last 17, 18 years, we kept using phoneme. Now I come to another aspect of literature, because this is one example from linguistics literature. ST called this term willing suspension of disbelief. When did you come to know about this? At master's level. And do we practice this in our everyday life right from our childhood? Willing suspension of disbelief. When we watch dramas, we watch movies, or in our everyday life even. Do you think that we keep doing that, willing suspension of disbelief?
Yes. Only then you can enjoy literature, otherwise you can't.
Yes, when we willingly suspend our disbelief that, okay, this thing is not going to happen. We willingly agree what is happening in the drama or in the movie. We know that this is not real, but still we believe in it. But unless and until we get admission in a master's program in literature, we do not know what is willing suspension of disbelief.
We know about the concept, but do not know about the term.
Yeah. So this is the reality of knowledge. So this is what I do when I teach my students. I tell them that, hey, students, listen, that in this class, I am not going to tell you anything new. You are here, you know a lot. Definitely it's not 100% true. Sometimes there are some new ideas. But to a greater extent, at least 70 to 80% you already know what I will be teaching you. And similarly here in this session also, you already know what I will be discussing with you, but only the terminology that is just like the epistemology of knowledge, a new term, a different term, more philosophical, or the reality of knowledge. But many of you might be knowing whatever I'll be discussing with you. So making our learners realize that you already know what I'm going to teach you. This is the reality of knowledge. And through this, we can make ourselves as well as our learners good learners. We need to give them this confidence that we need to tell them what is the reality of knowledge. So we need to tell them that in our class, for the next if we are teaching a course to our students, whatever I'll be teaching you, in every class I will be teaching you 4 or 5 new terms in every lecture. And those terms you already know. But the only thing is this, you are not aware of that term. So the difference between ignorance and knowledge is just the awareness of terminology. As it is not only with social sciences, in sciences also, in pure science, just like gravity. Right from childhood we experience gravity, we know what is gravity. But when we get to grade 9 or 10, when we study physics, then we get to know what is gravity. Similarly, if we ask a child of 2 or 3 years old, we say, please bring me H2O. Will he bring? But at that time, at that stage, does he know water? So it means he knows water, but he doesn't know the term H2O. So this is the difference between knowledge and ignorance. So when we think that we have got knowledge of a particular field, basically we only know the terminology of that field. Rest of the knowledge we have already got with us. As in chemistry, yes?
It's a kind of a self-reflexive question, and maybe it sounds a little bit kiddish type as well. But like, if the point is the audience that we have, they know everything. The person who is standing on the podium, he knows everything. Why there is this so much obsession with the jargons, with the terms?
This is what I'm telling you. This is the reality of knowledge. So the difference between knowledge, the reality of knowledge, and ignorance is only this, that we have associated knowledge with terminology, with jargon. So if we are not aware of terminology, of the jargon of a specific field, we think that we are not aware of that. Just like now here, I use the jargon of chemistry, H2O. I use the jargon of literature, willing suspension of disbelief. I use the jargon of linguistics, phoneme. But basically we are aware of all these things. So we are aware of knowledge to a greater extent, but the only difference between knowledge and ignorance is the awareness of terminology. So this is the first step. So this is the reality of knowledge, what I believe. And this is what my idea is. It might be wrong, you might disagree with this. So since, as I asked you, as I said to you, that this is not bookish, this is just my learning. This is my point of view. And this is based upon my reflective practice. So when I reflect on learning, so then I think I got this idea that this is the reality of knowledge. So again, this is a reflective process. So learning is basically a reflective process. Again, if you just agree with me blindly, again, we are just stopping the way of learning. So if you get a better idea than this, then through evidence, you can deny this idea and you can present your idea. This is what knowledge is.
Sometimes even the concept is new to us. Then what will we calling it? Ignorance, or when we do not know about even the concept?
Yeah, in some cases,
He
definitely.
does not know about water and we ask him to bring pina colada. Probably he doesn't know that.
Yeah.
So what will you be calling it?
I said that 70 to 80% is true, but definitely is not 100% true. Definitely sometimes there are some conceptual ideas which we do not know. But I'm telling 70 to 80%. So this is what I say, that as teachers, when we go to a class, we need to tell our learners that you are 70 to 80% you are aware of what I'm going to teach you. So don't worry about exams, don't worry about anything else. Just think about what you do not know. And in every class, whenever you come, just focus on those 5-6 terms that I teach you. And then you will get marks. Because even when we assess their learning, we give them those terms. We ask the same question, what is phoneme? Write a detailed note on phonemes in English language. What is ST Coleridge concept of willing suspension of disbelief? So write a detailed note on that. So this is what we do. So we just need to make our learners realize that you already know. And so this is what my belief is, this is the reality of knowledge. If you have a different idea, so please, yes, can you have a different idea? So we will further get to know about this, what is the reality of knowledge. Because again, I believe that this is not going to be one-way session. Your ideas are welcome.
I'll put this question again. Reality of knowledge is kind of, you are saying it's in jargons. Just knowing the jargon, this makes you knowledgeable. But question is, and I'm just curious to know about your take. Why this obsession with jargons?
Because this is the reality of knowledge. This is the reality of knowledge, that if we know jargon, we say that I have got knowledge of that specific field, and this is the reality of knowledge. If we are not aware of jargon, because then we cannot explain. Just like if I ask a student of grade 2 or 3 what is a phoneme, he is using that phoneme, but he is not aware of the term phoneme. That's why he says that, sorry, I don't know.
Dr. Shahzad, I think the question is prompted because we would like to know that who creates that knowledge.
Yes.
Actually, if it's the jargon that is called knowledge, then who is behind associating this jargon with the concept of knowledge?
Okay.
Actually, I think this is what is being lost.
Yeah, what I believe, again, my take on this, that knowledge is always here in the world around us. It is our responsibility to explore that knowledge. And this is how the knowledge has been put in such a way that the knowledge has been associated with terminology. As I said to you, that knowledge is around us. Just like even if a child sits on this chair, a child of 1 year sits on this chair, he knows that this is something to sit on. But he is not aware of the name chair. So it doesn't mean he is not aware of this thing. The only difference between his lack of knowledge, that he is not aware of this term, that this is a chair. But he knows that this chair or a table is used for what purpose. So this is what reality of knowledge. Knowledge already exists in the world. We have to just explore it. And how do we explore it? Through terminology. We associate a specific term with that knowledge, and then we say, okay, this is what. Just like even gravity, as I give you the example. Gravity was existing even before Newton discovered it. But the day Newton discovered, that day we came to know, okay, there is something gravity also. Did it mean that gravity was not existing before that? So knowledge is already there in the world. So the more we keep on exploring and the more terminology we keep on associating with that knowledge, we think that we are extending our knowledge.
Dr. Shahzad, I was of the view that there are knowledge facts that are universal. You talk about gravity and earth revolves around and other things. But then there are dimensions of knowledge. Maybe my exposure to knowledge is not your exposure to that particular domain. So don't you think that knowledge is 4D?
Yes, we will discuss this, that what is learning. We will associate this, that what is learning actually. Just like my experience is different, your experience is different, my learning is different, your learning is different about your particular thing. So we will, yes.
Can we talk about again principal and parameter concept over here? Principal and parameter concept of Chomsky paradigm.
Yeah, universal grammar.
Universal is something, the knowledge is there, we do understand.
Yes.
And parameter, that is actually the differences.
Yeah.
Like the knowledge we don't know. And that is what actually we are getting and we are gaining.
Yes. So to a greater extent, what I believe, that knowledge already exists, but we have to just explore it. And when we explore, we give a new term to that knowledge, and then we say that yes, this is knowledge. Yes, please.
And sometimes it happens we are teaching grammar to our students in language classes. They come to know about the rules, but practically when they're writing something or speaking something, they're committing mistakes. So there is a gap between competence and performance. So if knowing the jargons, knowing the terms is the knowledge, what about the application of that thing when they are writing or speaking, they are still with mistakes. They know the jargons, they know the terms, they know the rules. But practically, they're still with the problems.
Yes. So now, if you associate it just with one language, that is English language, then we get to know the other side. But think just like if we are using our native language, whether it is Urdu language, Punjabi language, or whatsoever. So we are using all those things, phrases, clauses, sentences in our language, but as a subject, we do not know what is a phrase, what is a clause. So again, we are using all that in our everyday life, but the issue is the same. We are not aware what is a phrase, what is a clause. Just like a 4-year-old child, he doesn't know what is a phrase, what is a clause, but still he is using that. So the day he gets to know, when we teach him that this is phrase, this is clause, he says, oh, today I have come to know what is a phrase and what is a clause. But actually he is using that already. Okay, the question that you have asked, that is associated with second language, English language in our case, that when we know what is a phrase, what is a clause, okay, after that we get to know the English language. But if we just talk about language in general, then we already know what is a phrase, what is a clause, and everything, just like even, yes. So as teachers, what I believe is that we need to give this confidence. That's why most of the time our students are not enthusiastic. And I have tried it practically in my classes. In the very first session when I go, I tell my students that please, I tell you clearly that you know everything. In every class I will tell you some new 5 or 6 terms, so just focus on those terms, and by the end of the session or by the end of this course, you will be having a lot of knowledge, because then I will again be judging the knowledge in your assessment, in your exams. So just feel about this and you will be quite relaxed. So this is the reality of knowledge. Okay. And now the next question, what is the reality of learning then?
It's not stagnant, it's loose and fluid, it goes on.
Okay.
You are asking about in an ideal sense and in the way things are going on.
If you define what is learning?
I think to know what we don't know.
To know what we don't know. And what is the process to know what we don't know?
Be curious.
Be curious and be surround yourself with people you know. Okay. Motivation. Should we be motivated? Okay, we take a step from this. What does mean? Though this is the topic of our today's discussion, what is the role of motivation in learning? As she has said that if we are motivated, we move to learn. Do you believe in this?
Yes.
That motivation is important for learning? No?
You feel confident in most cases if you are motivated.
Yes, please. Do you agree with this? She says that motivation is not important in learning.
In active learning, motivation is very important.
Okay.
In passive learning, we can learn from anything.
So how will you define active and passive learning?
Passive, when we are focused and we want to learn something.
Okay. I just ask another question. How many of you are motivated right now? Originally, genuinely. You see, only 5-6 people. And what about others? Why are you sitting here if you're not motivated? Why don't you leave? The question is, that if you're not motivated, you should leave.
Actually, motivation is too strong a word, and there are levels of learning. And sometimes we may not be motivated, but we might be interested.
Okay. So motivation, might not be motivated, but we might be interested. So how can we differentiate between these interest and motivation?
We might not be motivated, but we might be willing to.
Willing. Okay. Willing, motivated, interested. Okay. Keep these terms in your mind. Willing, motivated, interested.
I
Yes.
think anytime you want to learn something, there is 99% perspiration and 1% inspiration.
Okay. So do you agree with this?
Sometimes students are forced to learn because they have the grades in their minds, they have the examinations they pass.
Who forces them to learn? We, the teachers, or the students themselves? Can we, as teachers and parents, can we force our children, our learners to learn? How do they learn? This is the reality of learning. How do we learn?
I think the society forces them.
Yes, please. Anyone?
I think so what one of our colleagues talked about, especially that passively also we are learning. So I think she's right to some extent. But actually for learning, again, intake and input, these are the most important factors. If you are focused, you will learn more.
What do you mean by focus? Focus means noticing, attention.
Attention.
It means you are motivated.
Attention, as I told you, psychology says that we can be attentive just for 15 to 20 minutes, and after that we are not. So even attention, yes.
It depends.
Then it's related to the level of motivation you have to learn something.
Okay, what is your level of motivation today for this talk, for this seminar?
When I came,
If on a scale of 0 to 10.
when I came here, I received the email from the head, therefore I'm here.
So I mean you were forced, but you yourself.
But when I started interacting with you and the people,
Okay, do you think that by the end of this session, even if you're motivated or not, you will learn something? So what will be responsible for that learning? Your motivation or your staying here without motivation? You're staying here.
Before motivation, there is this inquisitiveness also in all of us. Don't you think that instigates us, that we want to know, we want to explore?
I think the presence.
Isn't this a nonsense idea what she is saying?
Inquisitiveness of human being.
Isn't this?
How could it?
I feel this is nonsense. This doesn't make sense.
The inquisitiveness of a human being is a nonsense idea. Seriously, Dr. Saab?
Okay, if I say this is nonsense for me, do you agree?
Yes.
No.
To you, it may be.
Did you mind it?
No.
But your facial expressions told me that you did mind.
I was trying to convince you that it's my side of reality and you must agree with that. It's totally up to you.
Okay. So I just wanted to show that motivation lies in the hand of the other person. I just said one word and she did mind it, what I felt. Okay. So by just saying one wrong word, I can just lower her motivation level. Okay. This is what motivation is. So motivation,
Successful?
I think so. But actually I did it only for a moment. If I continue for next 15 minutes and I say harsh for 2-3 more times, definitely you would have switched your mind off and you would have think, okay, this person is nonsense. He's saying me nonsense, my ideas, and actually this person, and you would have been very much demotivated. So motivation, what I feel, again, this is not something bookish, what I feel, motivation is transitory. Even if you are motivated, you think that you feel that we are motivated for the time being. We can be motivated for 5 minutes, for 15 minutes, for half an hour, but after that we are not motivated. And motivation lies in the hands of others who are around us, whether they are parents, our teachers, our friends, our superiors, sometimes even students. You know, when the students are not very responsive, we get demotivated as teachers.
complete environment matters.
So do you think that environment is important in learning? Yes. Then again, you are talking about motivation. If environment is motivated, then you will learn. If environment is not motivating you, then you will not learn. So again, you are moving to the side of motivation.
So our experience and exposure to things matter as well.
So we learn because of our experience.
Efforts.
Experience can be bad.
But so where is the idea of consistency then? There are people who are consistently motivated.
Yes. No one is consistently motivated. Again, it is not.
People who got successful, they say they are consistent in their work ethic.
Okay, how many of you can be consistently motivated for the next, I say, 1 week or 1 month or 6 months? Can you be consistently motivated? No?
People do.
How?
What about athletes? They go through a severe work ethic. What about the gym trainers who are constantly motivating them?
Again the same.
Oh, come on.
Even athletes are not constantly motivated, but they have to stick to a routine. They're disciplined. They're not motivated. Sometimes
Discipline.
motivation goes to discipline.
So when we are disciplined, are we motivated? When we are disciplined,
If not necessarily, the kids are like the kids even and like the grown up, they're using like cell phones, so I think they're motivated for years. And they're,
okay, sometimes we are.
The definition of discipline is doing something which you don't like.
Yes. So this is important. Sorry, I was just doing it deliberately. Again, please don't mind it. So I was just trying to make this point clear that in learning, motivation is less important and persistence, perseverance, consistency, which you said discipline, that is more important. And when we are disciplined, we are not motivated all the time, but we are forcing ourselves to be disciplined. Just like when we are following a diet plan, we like something different, means something spicy, something sweet. We want to eat, but we are disciplined. We are motivated to eat, but we are disciplined. In learning process, just like now in this class, you might not be motivated, but you are staying here, you are showing your persistence, your consistency. Just like even if you want to cover a course, just like even if you want to do MPhil or PhD. So you are not motivated every day, but still you do it because you are persistent, you are consistent, you are following perseverance. So the reality of learning is always based upon perseverance, not motivation. Perseverance comes from within, from inside. We decide, okay, I have to do this. I have to follow this diet plan. I will not take much sugar, or I will not take oily food. Though I am motivated, but still I am disciplined. And if I do it consistently, then I achieve something in terms of health. Even in terms of learning, just like you are not motivated, this lecture is quite boring for you, but you are staying here. You are showing perseverance. So because of this perseverance, you might learn something. So the reality of learning is this. The first step to learning is that we have to be persistent, consistent. We can never be motivated, or even if you are motivated, that is very transitory. And that's why you would have seen that the motivational speakers whom we listen, we get an idea and we try to implement it, but the next day we come back to our original routine. After watching their video, motivational speakers, we get motivated. Okay, right from next I will do this, I will do that, and so and so. But after a day or after maybe an hour, we just come back to our routine life, our everyday life. But the other side, when we take a decision, when we decide and we stick to it, we are not motivated, we are persistent. So learning is based upon persistence. This is the reality of learning. Again, this is my view. You might disagree. I feel that motivation lies in other person's hand, not always within us. Or even if it is, then it is very transitory. Any question related to this?
I think again it is a matter of aptitude. Like sometimes some people they might process things differently from other people. Even a learner might be motivated, might be persistent, but still the learning wouldn't take place like with the one if you compare. A second school might not be persistent, might not be motivated. So one factor is definitely that is the aptitude, I think. There are lot of it count.
Aptitude. Okay. Yes.
Also, I believe that motivation can be of two types. One is short-term motivation that we feel highly enthusiastic about, and then there is a long-term motivation that is in the end of the goal. That what goal we are trying to achieve, right? So if there is a goal in the end, then we have the motivation and we are persistent because of that motivation to achieve.
Yes, you were saying something.
Motivation, you are right. Motivation is just like emotion. It's like energy in the motion.
Yes.
You cannot sustain that energy all the time. It's fleeting. Sometimes you feel up, sometimes down. Sometimes up, sometimes down.
We also came to another term, as she said, that short-term motivation and long-term motivation. Do you agree that there are two types of motivation, short-term and long-term?
If we have intrinsic one, then we can have long term.
Hmm.
The long term. If it's extrinsic or because of the outer forces, yes. For some time we can be impressed or we can be inspired by other people, like you said, motivational speakers are there to motivate us.
Would you like to explain what is intrinsic motivation, what is
You have from your inner self. That your inner self forces that tells you that you have to achieve these goals. And when you're too persistent to do that something, then sometimes you form your habits accordingly. And
Okay.
you become what you want to. So then you achieve your goals and you learn.
Okay, so as she is saying that sometimes we are instrumentally motivated. We know that this is the benefit of this thing. So we, just like if we want to learn English language, we know that if we learn English language or if we are able to speak English language, which we can grow professionally. On the other hand, there is also the type of motivation, extrinsic motivation and so on. And the other term, long-term and short-term motivation. If we just analyze them in your own reflective practice, if you just follow, do you agree with this? Short-term motivation, long-term, intrinsic, extrinsic. Isn't this again just the game of terminology? If you just think critically, extrinsic, intrinsic, short-term, long-term.
But terminology is also assigned to an idea, which is there. It's not just floating.
Okay, so yes.
We are using lots of terms, but we are depending on students by using all those terms. What about the role of the teacher or the presenter? I think the one who is leading the whole course or the situation is more responsible for imparting motivation and imparting energy to the listeners. So
Okay.
the role of the one who is imparting knowledge is more important. We are mostly talking about students and listeners and their motivation.
Yes.
But it's more of the other way around.
Okay. So if I ask you to just for the time being come out of this terminology in extrinsic or intrinsic or short-term and long-term motivation, just think for a moment critically. How will you define these things? That what is the real way of learning, whether short-term or long-term, intrinsic or extrinsic? And just think about it that as you are telling me these terms, aren't we again going back to the bookish knowledge? Because we have learned these terms from the books. We did not know these terms before. We learned it from books, short-term, long-term memory, short-term, long-term motivation. And this is the problem with our learners also most of the time. And as ordinary learners, as average learners, we also follow the same. So knowledge, what we think that knowledge is what terminology we learn, and we just present that terminology as it is by adding some more ideas to that. We say short-term, long-term, intrinsic, extrinsic. But if you think critically, just think about short-term and long-term critically for a minute, just think about it. What is the difference between short-term and long-term? And tell me your own learning, your own idea. What is short-term and what is long-term motivation?
Again, a silly idea.
No. That is over.
But there is this new thing that is quite in vogue nowadays, that is dopamine. वो कहते हैं ठीक है, if you're having this dopamine instigates you to learn, that is a kind of a hormone that is going on, and that idea came into my mind because my 8-year-old is all the time on PS4, right? So the very click or achieving something in that game or something is, don't you think that dopamine is short-term or long-term motivation?
Again, don't you think that this idea is also coming from the books?
I guess it should come from the books because the experts write.
Okay, if I ask your opinion about that, just leave books for the time being. Just try to analyze short-term and long-term motivation and give me your own conclusion. Which you feel that, okay, this is short-term motivation, this is long-term. It might be any idea, right or wrong. Just give me your idea. Yes?
It can happen and it sometimes happens. Like if I come across a person, a girl, she leaves and I'm engaged in other activities, I'll forget about that.
Okay,
That would be a
so
momentary one.
I think the most important thing is practice.
practice.
Exercise, I mean, like ideas.
Practice in what, for long-term motivation?
No, suppose if you want to be slim and smart and sometimes
Okay.
only one time, but if you wouldn't stop eating and you wouldn't go to bed, then what is going to happen? So I think motivation might be there, but who is going to push you, that is important. The push.
Okay, yes.
I think this term might sound bookish, but there is life in it. When you say short-term motivation, long-term motivation, it can, for example, take it in this way. Something you are, like, I mean, sometimes you feel a drive for something because something has happened to you, and that is not, that is not putting you on in a stable mode. You all the time, you all the time have this nagging thing going on in the background. I have to go for it. I have to go for it. And sometimes short term can be short terms. I would put usually you can say in organization, for example, where you are working. At some point in time, they can keep you in a running mode, but usually that does not stay for a long time. So yes, these are bookish jargons, but there is a lot of we can create or we can attach a lot of lifetime examples to it. Like in short.
Yes, madam, you were saying something.
I think it has a lot to do with the reward. For example, if I have to go to the gym, my short-term motivation would be that I'm going to see my friends, I'm going to get that boost of energy after. But I would also be motivated by my long-term goals, which have a higher reward, which is getting fitter, getting muscular. So it depends on how big the reward is. Immediate motivation, short-term motivation, a smaller reward, and
Yes.
long-term motivation, bigger reward.
So when you are going to the gym regularly, are you motivated or you are persistent?
Persistent.
So in another way, can we say that long-term motivation is actually the other name for persistence, perseverance, consistency? So the same is the thing. So again, I mean logically, if we think,
Motivation would be the drive to do something, and the long-term motivation would be the achievement that we'll be having afterwards.
the achievement is the goal, is the achievement, but the process through which we achieve, she is talking about that is long-term motivation. When we go through the process and we achieve, when we achieve, that is not motivation, that is the reward. Okay, so
I guess if we are considering motivation to be an emotion, emotions are always short term. Even if you consider the strongest emotion like love, even that becomes short term when you give it time. But when you consider it,
When you give it time and get married.
and then you are persistent again, you continuously tolerate that person and you are consistent in doing that, and finally, so yes,
It can stay alive.
yeah, you can, and then you develop interest. When you are persistent, continuously you tolerate that person, you develop interest, and then you develop love. So what I wanted to tell you, that the learning process, what I believe, again I am saying you might disagree, this is what my idea is, because I always do not believe in bookish ideas. I try to reflect on the ideas and then I come up with a conclusion, and I might draw another conclusion after some years when I study more. So what I believe, and after this discussion what we have concluded, that there are only two things, motivation and persistence, and the learning process is initially slightly motivated by the external stimuli, that is motivation, but the actual learning, the process through which we pass through, that is dependent upon persistence, perseverance, which she named as long-term motivation. So there is nothing long-term motivation, the other side, that we are persistent. And when we are persistent, as you said, this persistency develops the habit of interest, then we develop interest. This is what I tell to my learners also, that if you think that you will get motivated the very first day and you will start learning, this is not going to happen. And learning is always a boring process. So that's why I said this session is also about learning, so definitely this is a boring process. It is not going to be entertaining at all. And this is what I have noticed throughout. We think that, and even in different teacher trainings we are told that the teacher should be like an actor, teacher should be like a performer. And across the world, just like when I studied 6 courses when I was doing masters in New Zealand, I studied 9 different courses when I was doing PhD in UK. So I found that all those lectures, they were always boring to a greater extent. that is 2 hours lecture, it is always boring. But when we are persistent, then we learn something, and learning is always a boring process. So it is not joyful in the beginning. Yes, it becomes joyful through persistence. We get joy when we are persistent, even in terms of, as we got the examples of this, our physical fitness. When we are persistent and we are physically fit, then a time comes when we enjoy that fitness. And if someone of you is doing that, just like if we shorten, if we just cut our eating habits, initially we don't like it. But when we are persistent and we eat less, we are happier and we are joyful. And the day we eat a lot, we feel tired and exhausted and we are not fresh. If you do this, you will find out. I have done it practically. And the same is the case with learning. When I was an initial level learner, I noticed that I would study for 1 hour or 2 hours, 3 hours. I was not able to read more than that. But I noticed that I have to learn and I have to be persistent. And I kept on doing reading and a lot of reading. And then a time came when I was reading 8 to 9 hours a day, and even then I was feeling fresh. So this is what I have noticed. The reality of learning is dependent upon persistence, not just motivation. And when we are persistent in any matter, then we develop interest, as we got the example from our everyday life, that we develop interest in our partner also, because when we are persistent, we tolerate, and then a time comes when definitely we develop love, affection for our partner. So learning is dependent upon persistence, and along with persistence, reflective process. So this is the reality of learning. If we are just bookish, so we can just know again some terminology and we will reproduce that terminology, and unfortunately, this is our education system. We keep telling learners about those terms, and we give those terms in the exams, and we ask them to reproduce those terms. They memorize it, just like in simple way, just like I take a photo and I send it to another person through my AirDrop or through my WhatsApp. So this is what actually we make our learners. They copy an image from a book, and then on the day of exam, they paste it on their answer sheet. They are not reflective. And that's why we always, so this is what, unfortunately in our context, in Pakistani context, what we do, we get an idea from one side and we just expand that idea to the other side. What we get from the society, from media, whatever, even from the books, we just reproduce those terminologies, those terms, those ideas, and we think that I'm spreading knowledge. But the knowledge is when we are engaged in the learning process and we are reflective. Reflective means if we understand the real meaning of that. And this is the learning process. The learning process, this is the reality of learning, is dependent upon, so we have already discussed that learning is really boring process and we have to develop interest. Role of motivation we have discussed. So how can we learn efficiently? We can learn efficiently when we focus on meaning, the underlying idea of anything, and that is always a reflective process. So most of the time when we are reading, when we are teaching, when we are learning, our focus is not on meaning. Our focus is always on form.
This is the most difficult thing that I find as a teacher, to make students think critically, because I teach logical reasoning, and that's the subject directly related to this one. And I find this is difficult because the way they have gone through schooling and in college, they don't know what the reflection is or what thinking for your own self or your own idea is. So खुद से कुछ पढ़ के और अपना आइडिया उसमें इंक्लूड करना भी मुश्किल है. अब उनकी गलती नहीं, ये हमारी स्कूलिंग की गलती है.
Yes.
जिससे वो गुजरते हैं. तो एक तो इंग्लिश लैंग्वेज का जो मसला है, इट मेक्स इट डबल डिफिकल्ट. अब जो हमारे पास स्टूडेंट्स आते हैं यूनिवर्सिटी में, स्पेशली जो स्टूडेंट्स आते हैं, अब जिस मेंटल सेटअप को लेके आते हैं भाई पढ़ना कैसे है, और जब हम ये बात करते हैं, स्पेशली मुझे तो करनी पड़ती है बिकॉज दिस इज लॉजिकल रीजनिंग. अनलेस यू थिंक फॉर योरसेल्फ, अनलेस यू क्वेश्चन थिंग्स, देन यू आर नॉट डूइंग दिस क्रिटिकल थिंकिंग. So now tell me what to do with these students.
Yes, okay, his question is, just So why learning English is a difficult process for us? And he says that this is because of learning that we do not get the meaning, the idea, I mean because of the English language. So where does the problem lie? Is this because of English language? Yes?
I'll be more self-reflexive. I just want to add to his point, his question. This is a very kind of, I would say, a cliche type of argument. We have here training sessions over here, and this point comes again and again that students lack critical thinking in all these skills. I personally think they are a reflection of us. We are a product of exactly the same system.
This is what we do, yes, exactly.
This system is producing minds in a particular way. So I'll be more honest. I'll be putting things in a very naked way. Sometimes the thing that you expect from your student, that you need to think critically, you need to think reflectively, you need to be reflexive. Sometimes the person sitting on the other side of the podium, we exactly are not sure what exactly these things are, and we kind of give them messages. This is what is critical thinking. This is what is reflexive. This is what is this. And you people are dumb. You people don't study. You people give time. Literally, they don't have any demonstration in front of them. What exactly are these monsters?
So this is what what happens with us. We do in our sessions. We transfer that knowledge which we have gained from the books, as I discussed with you, and we transfer the same terminology to our learners. That's why they are not passing through, or they are not going through that learning process. Now I come back to your question, and that is associated with this, that mostly it is said that because of English language, as we are not studying in our native language, so English is a real hurdle in our learning process. So do you agree with this?
Yes.
So why is this? Why the English language is the problem in the learning process? If we just analyze it critically here, today's session. So what do you think? Why English? Why are we more comfortable in Urdu language in the learning process when we use Urdu language? Why are we not that much active when we learn through the English language? Okay.
Sir, I think so. We are not taking it as a language, because when we were in schools and we taught Urdu as a language, but if I talk about English, then we more specifically consider it as a tool to communicate or to promote ourselves.
Tool to communicate. Okay.
To promote in professional level or to in the marketplace. But I think so. If we consider it. Or if we acquire it as a language, then it will be easy to learn the language.
Okay. So before we answer this question, you need to remind yourself we are here to learn. Because again, now you are feeling bored. I think 1 hour has gone. 45 minutes, yeah. So 45 minutes or 1 hour is gone, or more than. So just remind yourself you are here to learn. Did you learn something, by the way, during this discussion? Okay, we come back to the same question, that why is English a problem in the learning process?
I think in Urdu, because it's not, or in Pashto, in my native language, it's easy to express your ideas because you have a lot of data in your mind to connect you have a lot of wording in your mind. When it comes to English, you know the concept, but because the language is not ours, we don't have enough words for it, so we get stuck in connection of words.
Okay, so I ask another question. When we teach English language, when we learn English language, do we teach form or meaning? In our schools, in our classes, what do we teach? Form or meaning? Form. We teach them that this is present continuous tense, this is present perfect tense, this is active voice, this is passive voice. So our focus is always on form. So the real hindrance in the learning process is that we lack focus on meaning. We do not understand the real meaning. This is the problem. In Urdu language, we understand the meaning. Just like if just think about the native language, your Punjabi, Saraiki, Pashto, whatsoever, Urdu language. When you, as a young learner, when you were 2 years old and you started using that language, were you using that language to tell about the form or to convey certain meanings? Focus was on meaning. Just like if I say, as a young child, I say that I need water, mujhe pani do. So I'm not saying that whether I'm grammatically correct or not. I'm just interested in getting water, in the meaning. So this is real learning is, in learning, if our focus is on meaning, not on form, then the real learning takes place. And when we are focusing on meaning, we are reflective. When we are focusing on form, we are not reflective. We are passing the form from one way to the other. I give an example. Can someone of you tell me the definition of phoneme? Anyone who is teaching phonetics and phonology, yes? Unit of sound. Unit of sound in speech. This is a phoneme. Okay, this is what the definition is given in the books normally. The smallest unit of sound. Any other definition which is given in the books? So normally when we teach our students, we say that phoneme is the smallest meaningful unit of sound. Do we? So our students memorize this. So when they memorize and they paste it in the paper, in the exams, are they focusing on form or meaning? They're reproducing the form. So if I ask you to just think about it, why phoneme is the smallest meaningful unit of sound and how it is? Just think for a minute and tell me. Why is phoneme the smallest meaningful unit of a sound?
Because by changing one phoneme in one word, you can change the meaning of a word.
Can you give an example?
Cat and bat, if you change k with b, you replace b, you have to.
Yes, this is exactly. So when we focus on phoneme in this way, and we tell our learners that focus on the meaning, that in the book it's given that a phoneme is the smallest meaning distinguishing sound. So the next thing we need to think critically how it is meaning distinguishing. Now we are not, when we focus on this line and we focus on meaning, not on the form, that if a phoneme is the smallest meaning distinguishing unit, so we are reflective, our focus is on meaning. And we are trying to make our learner focus on meaning. And then our learner says, okay, yeah, it is true that when I say cat, k, the other two phonemes a and t are same in bat or cat or rat and cat. But the only one phoneme that makes the difference, when we say k, it brings the image of a cat, a billy in our mind. And when we say rat, the image is totally different. So the meaning is entirely different. So meaning gets changed because of one phoneme, one sound, k and r. So now when we teach our learner this way, then the actual learning will take place. So actual learning always takes place when we focus on meaning, not on form. What normally we do in our everyday teaching, we focus on form, we keep asking students to memorize something from the book and to reproduce that in the papers. So then the students, they just reproduce the form, and that's why the reflective process is stopped. So learning is based upon the reflective process, and reflective process is basically based upon the idea of meaning. When we understand meaning, we learn, we raise questions. When we do not learn the meanings, or when we do not focus on the meanings, we do not raise further questions in our mind, and as a result of it, the learning process stops, or it is just copy and paste type of thing. So meaning is very important. And language, basically, language is a way to communicate meaning, not form. So whatever, just like the language that I'm using now, if I'm able to communicate meanings to you, you will get the things. On the other hand, if I say some other sound and you do not get the meanings, the language won't perform its function. Just like if I say ana udarris fi jama. How many of you understand this? Now I'm using some other sounds. Ana udarris fi jama. What if I say haza kam? No? Haza kam? किसके अपने या किसी के? So now you see, I'm again producing sounds, but no communication is taking place because of the lack of, you do not understand the meaning. So sound is nothing, form is nothing, I'm using form. But when my form conveys you meaning, then learning takes place, and then communication takes place. But if there is no meaning, no learning. When I said haza kam, mean what's the price of this? How much does it cost? And when I say ana udarris fi jama, I teach in a university. Now you understand? Now you have got the meanings. So communication is taking place not because of form, because of meaning. So when our focus, even when we read the books, if our focus is on meaning, then we understand, then real learning takes place. This is what I told you, that motivation and consistency. I went focused on the meaning, that what is the learning process. I found out that no, motivation is not, it is consistency. Or long-term motivation, no. When I focus on meaning, long-term motivation, there is nothing like motivation. It is persistence. I mean, at the level of meaning, I understand. You might agree or disagree, but when I use my reflective practice and I focus on the meaning, long-term motivation is the other name of consistency and persistence. So that's all. So this is a real process of learning, and then we get to know what real learning is. So the problem, as you mentioned, that when we use English language, our learners face difficulty because through English language, no communication is taking place. I mean, meanings are not being transferred to the learners. Because right from our schooling, from class 1, our education system is based upon, that system promotes the transfer of just form, not the transfer of meaning. So we can understand only when we are reflective, and we will be reflective only when we understand the meaning. And then we raise questions. Two approaches to learning: product oriented and process oriented. Have you heard these terms before? Even these terms are used in writing, teaching writing, product oriented, process oriented. And even in syllabus designing, it is said that there are two types of syllabi: product oriented and process oriented. So when I was teaching these courses to my students, so I again tried to think that whether these two approaches, product oriented and process oriented, can we apply in learning in general or not? Again, the same reflective process. I thought when I was teaching the course of teaching writing and when I was teaching the course of syllabus designing, I came across these two things: product oriented approach and process oriented approach. And normally those people who are from the field of education, how many of you are from this language teaching education in general? Yes. So normally you see that we talk about setting objectives, learning objectives, setting goals, and we teach our students and our teachers also, when we train them, that we need to set certain goals for our learners. So do you think that setting goals is really a good strategy of teaching?
Yes.
Okay. So how can you explain? Again, think critically. When we set goal, what happens with us? Yes.
If we don't set goals, we won't be able to actually plan the methods that we're going to use in order to achieve those goals. Right? So we have to have very clear and concise goals in our minds.
Yes, in a way it is true, because there is a proverb also that very few people plan to fail, most of the people fail to plan. So that's why they are unsuccessful in their life. So yes, setting some sort of objective is definitely important. But do you think that only setting objective is the ultimate goal in teaching? Just like for every class we set a goal, and it is in education, I have heard in every training of education, it is setting goals, learning objectives, set this, set that. Again, think about it critically. Is this a good strategy, or what are the advantages and disadvantages? Again, another question. Setting goals. When we set goals, so what is the end product of that goal? Is this skill? Skill? Skill, knowledge. When we set a goal, okay, suppose our learners set a goal that they have to get 3.9 GPA in this semester. Is this a skill? Or we have to get 90% marks. Is this a skill? So goals are normally, this is that for this class, the goal is, or the student set, that they have to get 3.9 GPA or 80% marks. So this is a goal. Is this a skill?
That should be on certain grounds.
No.
I think knowledge is the focus, and apart from different, if a person has knowledge, so that person might school. So knowledge is the focus actually.
Okay, again I give you 1 minute to think about what is a goal in true sense. Use your mind and think about what is the goal. When we set goals in our life or in our learning, what do we set when we set goals?
What do you want to achieve?
And what is achievement? What is achievement? Having, okay, what is that when we have?
It can be material thing.
Material, okay, what is that?
It can be abstract.
Knowledge, okay. What is that goal? Outcome. So in our goal, we are setting an outcome. Okay, we take a very simple example to understand this instead of these complicated examples. This is spring season now. What you do today when you go back home, you put certain seeds in your lawn of these flowering plants. What goal have you set?
Enjoy spring.
To enjoy?
Spring.
You have put some seeds in the soil, and what is your goal? What is your objective? To grow plants. Okay, you set this objective, you put some seeds, and after that you say that I have set a goal. Will you get the goal? Will you get the flowering plants? What will you do to get that end product? Watering. Yes. So product oriented approach is really good, but if you do it for the time being and then forget it. The other thing is process, when you enter into the process. Just like sometimes if you put seeds and every day you dig the soil and you think plant hasn't grown yet. So what is your objective oriented, goal oriented? But when you set a goal, you put seeds in the soil and then you forget about the goal and you enter into the process. Every day you water the plant. Will you get your goal? Yes. So what is more important? Focusing on goal or focusing on process? Process. So in learning, process is more important. Goal is important only up to this extent that you set a milestone that I have to achieve this and then forget about it. Because if you keep thinking about the goal, it will again create depression and it will keep you anxious. It will create anxiety. When you enter into the process, you will enjoy that. And definitely a time will automatically come, the same time, 21 days or 30 days, you will get the same goal if you enter into the process. So this is what important in learning. Normally what our learners do, their focus is always on the goal. I have to achieve 90% marks. So what should I do? I need to cram this particular question, or this question is more important from examination point of view, and then they paste it and they achieve their goal. You see, even my students now, for the last 3-4 years, I see all of them get 3.8 GPA, 3.9 GPA, and so on. When I ask them a question, they are unable to give me the answer. Or when they appear once again in an interview for MPhil, when we ask the same questions, none of them gives us the answer. But they have got, sir, I have got 3.8 GPA, so I have got 4 GPA. Because their focus is just the goal. They have not entered into the process. In learning, the real important thing is process learning. And when we enter into the process, we enjoy it. And if we just keep thinking about goal, we get anxious. And goals can be of our everyday life. Just like you said, you have set a goal that I have to construct a new house. It keeps you worried. How will it be possible? I need that much money, that much amount to do this, so and so. But if you enter into the process, the goal will automatically be achieved the same time. But what is helpful in setting goal and entering into the process, when you enter the process, what you achieve, you have got a sense of achievement. And same happens in learning. When you learn, you develop sense of achievement, and then it develops your interest, and automatically as learners or as teachers, we achieve this goal. So what we need to tell our students that please just set a goal, but don't just think about the goal. Enter into the process of learning. That is, interact meaningfully with the learning process, with your books, with us, the teachers. Then automatically you will achieve your goal, and you will be having both the things. You will have knowledge as well as your grades. So just grades are not enough, knowledge. And knowledge will be achieved when we enter into the process. Yes, please. Yes, this is the problem with our education system. Then there is no learning. If the end product is just the focus is the end product, and you do not enter into the process, then the real learning doesn't take place. Because real learning takes place when you enter into the process. And process is that which gives, and this is what means, just like if, suppose, I have got GPA 4 in my degree, but I didn't go through the process. I didn't learn. When I will be appearing in an interview, will I be confident? Not at all.
But
Yes.
also, that there might be many students that they might have scored like 3.8, 3.9, and definitely they have gone through the process, and that is why they have scored or they have achieved that goal of 3.8, 3.9, and so I think we cannot generalize there. What you are talking is right, but I'm talking about generalization.
Yeah, I answer this. When I say goal mean we will go for degrees. We will go for education in general. We will not be knowledge. We will not be having knowledge. Just like what we do normally, what I want to clarify, our focus is just on degrees and bookish knowledge, what I am discussing, that we learn something and we paste it as it is without entering into the real process. Real process is when we become lifelong learners, and lifelong learners when we learn the process of learning and we apply it everywhere in every aspect of our life. That is real learning.
Yeah, like for some people.
Yeah.
Like many students, I mean, if they scored like 4 CGPA, so I think they are going through that process. But for some students, yes, their end and goal might be just by any means they should score 4 by 4 CGPA.
Yes. Yes, again, this is another reality. As teachers, we need to understand that if we give this knowledge to our learners, or if we want to train them to follow this pattern, all of them will not follow this pattern. So this is another reality. This is another critical thinking. Just like even in this interaction which we are having, some of you definitely would say after leaving it, it was really nonsense. There was nothing new in this session. It was just a wastage of time. But some of you will definitely say, yeah, there was something interesting in it. Okay. So this is what the purpose is to go through the process. So everyone doesn't enjoy the thing as it is. So definitely if there are, naturally there are 50 students, you cannot teach all of them equally and they will not be equally successful. This is another reality of life. That's why in my class, I don't push my learners, I focus myself. I push myself to teach them well, because I know that if I teach them and I want that all of them should be equally good, it is very unrealistic approach and it is not going to happen. So instead of pushing my students, I should just push myself. Again the same, I should play my role, that how can I teach them well. Next, it is their responsibility. Whoever wants to get that knowledge or who wants to be successful, he or she will be successful. It is not my responsibility that much. My responsibility lies with myself. And this is another reality. So this is another learning, that don't push everyone to believe in what you say. If somebody wants to get something, that's okay. Your purpose is just to focus on yourself and to improve your learning and just to communicate this to your learners. This is what I am here for, that I just shared this knowledge with you. Again, it is your choice whether you agree with this or not. Thank you so much. This is over. If you want to have any questions, so you are most welcome.